All right. Hey, everybody. How are you? Welcome to the show today. Happy New Year. I hope you had a good New Year. I hope you had a good holiday. For our part, we're just here another day, first Starfinder Wednesday of the year, and couldn't be better. Today, we're going to preview, I guess, not really preview. We're going to talk about the Vanguard, which is one of the new classes in the Character Operations Manual playtest that's going on right now. And to do that, we've got some folks here. And let me tell you, it's going to be a good one because we've got Owen, as always, but we've got Joe Pasini in the house. All right. So, Daigle, how are you? Thanks for joining us, Mark. Sorry you can't join us. Hillary, how are you? Good to see you. Or see your chat. I guess it's not. I'm not seeing you. But anyway, thank you for joining us. How was the holidays?
Good.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah, good times.
Did you have times off?
Yeah,
some. A little bit.
I took off more than half the month.
So nice.
I was considerably gone.
Teach me your ways, please. That sounds awesome.
First, work a bunch of overtime for a whole year and don't take any breaks.
Okay.
Then at the end of the year, take a half a month off.
Okay, perfect. I'll need the notes later.
That's
Luckily,
okay.
it's being recorded.
Yeah.
So.
I took almost half a day off.
Almost half a day? Wow.
3 hours, that's pretty. Yeah.
This is the thing. We've been trying to get Joe on the show for a while. And the thing is that for the longest time it was Joe was, no, I don't want to go on the show. I've got too much to do. Because he was working on the beginner box for Starfinder, which we're really excited about. Then after that, it was like, okay, as soon as the beginner box is done, we'll get a hold of him and everything. But then it just got busy with like the Character Operations Manual and all of that stuff, which is why we kind of insisted that you would be here because the Vanguard, you wrote this. This was yours, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to get into that, and then we'll be talking a little bit about the playtest and all of that sort of thing. First off, let's start with how's the playtest been going? Has it been productive? Has it been frustrating? Has it been fun? What are we looking at here?
It's certainly been both productive and frustrating. But the frustration is to be expected, right? That's part of the process of a playtest is we say, here's this wonderful thing we've created. Find all the flaws. And then people do, which is the whole point, but that doesn't prevent you from periodically going, should have gotten that right the first time. Actually, Joe and I were just looking at a lot of the feedback along with the rest of the team on the Vanguard. So a lot of people are on our message boards, which is great, at Paizo.com. We have character operation manuals, message boards and threads specifically. And then there are the surveys, which you can find at the same place where you link for the download. And the surveys give us some very specific kinds of information, which is useful because we can, for example, sort it in a number of different ways. And we have a uniform baseline on how everyone's responding. So the response has been great. It's still going on until the 16th. We're definitely very much appreciating the time people are taking to respond to these things, and we look forward to everyone giving us all their thoughts that haven't already.
That sounds awesome. Joe, how has the process been for you so far?
Really great. I got to write a class, my first D20 class ever.
How was that?
Wow. I can't say I recommend it necessarily. But if you're going to do it, have Owen develop it because he's done hundreds.
That's literally true.
It was really good to have him as a backstop.
Yeah.
Or a shortstop. I guess we're sending it out. I don't know baseball.
It's a baseball thing. I don't know.
Outfielder?
I was the pitcher.
Sure.
Don't. So
there you go.
Writing a class is one of the hardest things that you can do in D20 game design. This first step where you've got a blank piece of paper and all the parts of a class are interconnected, right? So like you're trying to create something that is unique and interesting and effective and thematically linked, and starting from nothing and going there. It's not like writing a spell or an archetype or a prestige class or any of the things we do that sort of build on other things. It is really starting at the bottom. And it's a thing that is going to be the primary way a player interacts with the game, right? Your class decides more than anything else. It is the most important question of what can I do? What is my character like? What sort of things make sense for me? And I was very, very excited when we had kind of come up with this pitch as a group, and Joe picked this class as the one he wanted to write most. And it was I think it was a good choice to give these classes to people that are most excited to write them. And I think he did just a really great job of taking this sort of nebulous idea, this thing that isn't just like saying, hey, we're going to do an Inquisitor in space, right? Soldier, I love our soldier design, but soldier is very much, hey, what would a fighter be like if you put them in space, right? That's not Elite. The Vanguard's something very, very different, and we want it to play differently and act differently. And when developing it, I was able to say, we've got a great start here, and there's some really cool mechanical ideas. It's not mechanically like anything that we currently have in the game or that really I've ever seen before.
Yeah.
So I loved that starting point. And that's one of the reasons why the playtest feedback is so important, because we are doing things that we have not done or seen done before, and having people tell us what works, what doesn't work. And even simple things like on the surveys, we're like, what abilities did you pick at second level? And if it turns out that 90% of people picked one thing and we had 12 choices, then we probably haven't done a good job balancing those as all being different levels of usefulness. And that didn't happen at second level, at least so far. Yeah. But there are some levels where obviously fewer people play, but there are some levels where we're like, well, no one has selected this ability.
Yeah.
No one whatsoever. Does that, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but it does mean that's something we want to look at. Is this other ability too good? Is this too bad? Is it written confusedly? Is it irrelevant? Is it too corner case? Mm-hmm. And so those are all good places where we can go back and say, okay, we had a set of assumptions. This is what's happened when it actually interacts with the world. And then where do we want to take it from there?
Right. So let's start from the beginning a little bit. So the idea of the Vanguard was started and kind of pitched to the team.
Well, so we sat down together as a team and we said, what do we want out of these new classes? And we had a long discussion, but there was one point where we were pitching just sort of general concept, and basically everybody on the team pitched some kind of juggernauty, tanky, can just take hit after hit after hit and just stand there and protect the party by absorbing all the damage. I guess in Starfinder it's less of this and more of
right. That's true.
But I had a slight tweak to that, the flavor that I wanted to add to that, which was this manipulation of entropy, which gets kind of a bad rap. I think if I were a Vanguard in the Starfinder universe, I'd be like talking to people about how I can control entropy, and they're like, oh, Cult of the Devourer kind of stuff. Like, no, it's cool, I swear. Like, you can, because entropy is a measure of disorder in a system, right? And so people associate that with the decay and the heat death of the universe and other fun stuff like that. But the Vanguard's cool because they can stop that. They can even reverse it in some cases. And they're a more mystical melee artist. And so we came to that conclusion that we wanted something like that. We knew it would be con-based. And then, we had more and more conversations that narrowed down the idea more and more until we had something that I could go stare at a blank page and try to stare at a lot of pages actually.
Yeah, and then that's the next question. So then you get this thing, you wrap your head around this is kind of what this class is supposed to be, and this is what we want. And then what's your next steps? I mean, like you said, it's a blank paper.
Yeah,
right? I
mean, looking at a lot of other classes, with Starfinder it's a little harder because we only have the core classes. We have 7 classes to work off of.
That's true.
And to Owen's point earlier about not having this is not a space something. It is a Starfinder thing, and that's what I'm most excited about with Starfinder. Pathfinder is great, and I don't have as much experience with it, so I've really enjoyed coming up with stuff that is good for our universe, regardless of what happened on a lost planet.
No, and that makes total sense. I think like right now in the chat right now, there's a conversation where somebody is like, we're new to it. We don't know Pathfinder very much, and a little muffin is just basically like, you don't need to know You don't need to know Pathfinder. You can just do it. Or the real POTUS is saying that you don't need to know Pathfinder. You can just jump in. It is that different of a game.
Yeah.
And the direction that you guys are taking it is just amazing, and it's getting more and more fun. So when this playtest started, team goals aside, personally, Joe, what was your hope with the playtest when this whole thing started to kick off?
For this class specifically, I was hoping to see what the synergies people would find with it, with other classes, especially new classes and existing ones, and taking this idea of a tank, which is not a new idea. It's so core that we decided to make a class that does it specifically. I mean, we have a soldier, and a soldier can be an effective tank, but this sort of mystical martial artist, manipulator of just fundamental forces of the universe feels very sci-fi fantasy, and I'm really excited to see what kind of neat stuff people do with it. Like, I'm hoping to see a Solarian that just supernovas in a big ball of fire, and then their Vanguard ally standing right next to them concentrates some of that and then just punches someone.
Nice.
Or, a big bad throws a grenade right into the middle of the group and the Witch Warper like pushes it over 5 feet and then the Vanguard jumps on it, protecting the party, this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's like the hero. I think somebody in the chat said that it's the come at me bro.
Yeah.
Class, which I think that it's like, bring it like that. I like that's kind of one of the focuses of it. But then that also brings up the other question of offensively, is does it just make it a one-dimensional class at that point if that's your main build, or how does that balance?
One of the trickiest things whenever you're talking about having classes that are good at one thing, right? Like I'm good at absorbing damage, defending other people, etc. Is that can't be the only thing you're doing. But if you are better at that than everyone else, that means you can't be as good at everything else as everyone else. So balancing the entropic strike ability, which is the primary offensive ability of the Vanguard, was one of the real tricks of trying to get the design right, and it's one of the things that we really wanted to get people's feedback on. What we want is for you to ultimately be as useful in combat as any other combatant-based characters, right? As any other full base attack bonus class, but to play differently. So specifically, the Vanguard, for example, tends not to peak as much damage as a Solarian or a Soldier, but their attacks are based on EAC instead of KAC, which means that they are, and you can have other characters that are based on EAC, but their core ability does that, and the class is con-based, so the things that they are selecting to be defensive helps them consistently hit, even if they aren't doing as much damage per hit. And they've got all sorts of options to interact with specific weapons and specific class features and things you can do with shields that should help them to be effective in combat while playing differently. And so one of the things we need from people playtesting is to say, were you effective? Was it fun? What would you change if you could? And that feedback will help us dial in. When we showed this class to our publisher, Eric Mona, one of the things he said that I was really excited by was he said, I see stuff here I have not seen before, right?
Nice.
And Eric's, I worked with Eric at Wizards of the Coast, right, nearly 20 years ago. So he's been in the industry a long time. And so having him say, there's stuff here that seems to be a little different from anything that I've seen people do before, that was very exciting. It's one of the things that really got me revved about what Joe had done with this class's core design.
One of the other, the mix of maybe offense and defense is the reactive class feature that Vanguards get, which gives them an additional reaction per day and then more than that later, which I see as kind of, like I said, both offensive and defensive potentially, because you have so many reactions, especially as a Vanguard. You can decide what to do. You can try to stop someone from moving. Maybe you fail the first time, but you do it again. It's like, no, just like stop. Like
I said stop.
Yeah. One of our, we have a long list of inspirations for all these classes, and we had a lot of weird ones for the Vanguard, I think, in particular. And it runs the gamut from I'm blanking on all of them now. The guy from Unbreakable is one of them. Yeah. Because he just takes hits and he seems unremarkable, but is very powerful in that aspect. Juggernaut, of course. Yep. Fist of the North Star, which I haven't seen. Dragon Ball Z stuff, kind of, with just this charging up of energy, screaming a lot. The Terminator is, there's Captain America. Like, you can take this class a lot of different directions, and that I really find that interesting.
Which is great. I mean, that just basically means however you want to play the game. There's a way that you can play that to fit into how you prefer the character to be molded and shaped and all of that sort of thing. It's really amazing. What are some of the things that you're super excited for people to discover about the Vanguard versus some of the other? Because there's three classes during the Character Operations Manual playtest. We've talked about the other two already, which you can find on YouTube and in our videos here on Twitch. With this one, what are some of the ones you were like, oh, that's going to be a fun little thing to have stand out and stuff like that?
Again, I'm curious about reactive, so if you have a chance to give us feedback on that, I'd love to hear what you do with that. Aspect catalysts are another thing that Vanguards get at a slightly higher level, which is when they take a critical hit or
run out of stamina or run out of hit points.
Yeah, they can do a really powerful ability, like give a bunch of hit points back to their allies or something. Basically, as they go down, you can be like, just release all this energy that you've been accumulating from taking damage as the tank. And I think that'll lead to a lot of cool story moments where it's just like, oh, and then he went down and like healed me just enough that I was able to take out the, I'm very curious to see.
Yeah, those like buzzer beaters. Yeah. It's like almost dead, but not. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, there are some high level differences at how I expect a 14th, 15th, 16th level Vanguard to operate in game compared to the most comparable other classes, Solarian and Soldier, that I think it is going to make the most effective way to use them tactically different than the other classes. We were talking about being able to do different builds, and we had a few builds in mind with this class, right? And we don't, in the playtest, we don't tell you, hey, this is the kind of build you should be building. So it is both very fascinating to see how often people are like, oh, clearly I should do these things to make this, high con tank, absorb damage, move up to the front line. That's all great. One of the things that excites me are seeing builds that we didn't consider, and then we look at, hey, is that effective? Is it unreasonable? Is there a way that we can support that better?
Right.
Or is it broken, right? One of the things that a lot of people are interested in is the fact that the main attack of the Solarian is an operative weapon. It has that class tag, that weapon special property, which means that multi-classing a Vanguard and an operative potentially is a very interesting specific multi-class combination. And we definitely were looking at whether that was going to be too effective or not effective enough. Because I don't have a problem with multi-classing. I want people to multi-class. We just don't want a multi-class to ever be the best version of a core class.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's do this. What other final thoughts about the Vanguard that you might or might not have? Because what I'm trying to get at is we've got about 10 minutes left, and if there's time, if not, no worries, we don't need to get into it. But if there is time, I kind of want to talk about the surveys a little bit. So I figure we get some final thoughts in about the Vanguard, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we can talk about with the surveys that we've gotten so far. So yeah, final thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. We've, like Owen said earlier, we were looking at some results earlier and reading some feedback. And also on the forums, that's been really helpful to read through what people are saying. And there's a specific issue I'll let Owen talk about that we've identified because of playtest feedback specifically.
Really, already?
Yeah, that we definitely want to and will fix. And we want to know if there's anything else like that out there. And we still have a couple weeks for this playtest, so.
Yeah. There's this one really obvious thing that when we look at it, we're like, oh, of course, that's a problem. So a big part of the Vanguard is that you build up entropy points in a pool of entropy points, and you spend them for special abilities.
Okay.
Except at first level. At first level, you build them up, but there is literally no way to spend them. There is nothing you can spend these points on as a first level Vanguard.
So you're just banking them at that
You
point?
are just banking them, and there's some benefit to banking them, but not much.
To brag at the monthly Vanguard meetings.
Yeah, exactly.
How much entropy did you get yesterday?
I got up to 5. Wow. Why? Because there was nothing I could do with them, right? That's a mistake. That's a problem. At the same time, we're also, one of the things we were wondering about was whether, as a class that has a pretty hefty focus on melee, whether this was a class that was going to have trouble getting into combat quickly enough, because this is very much a game of ranged attacks. And it has the advantage that it probably doesn't have to hug to cover the way that some classes do, which gives some increased in mobility. So we really wanted to see how much do people say, oh, this class can't move around enough, can't get to the fight fast enough. And that's a pretty common piece of feedback. So here we have one problem. There's a thing they need to be able to do that they can't do very well. And here's another problem. They've got a resource they don't have any way to spend on at low levels. I'm not saying
we're still trying to figure out what to do.
So we have not definitively say these two things are going to be linked, but clearly the first thing you think of is, well, we can do something so that you can spend, and it even makes sense, right? Because entropy involves the release of energy and how quickly things go out of systems and speed. So it would not be at all hard to say, hey, and these are not official numbers at all, right? But every Vanguard can burn a point of entropy to get plus
60, 20.
Whatever. To their movement for.
I may or may not have heard 60.
Well, so here's one of the things, right? We could say plus 60 feet for one round, right? That's a huge boost, very, very briefly, and then we're saying the power is to go right up into the fight. Or we could say it's plus 20 feet for a minute, and then we're saying you will be more mobile for a period of time. And whichever one we do, we could always have an option to go the other way as a higher level option or as a special ability you could pick. There are all sorts of things we could do with it. But that's the sort of thing where as soon as people said there's no way to spend entropy points at first level, we're like, of course, that's a thing that we've got to fix. And it's because you take a holistic, when you're looking at these classes, right? We take a holistic look at the class, and I'm like, well, all this stuff seems reasonable. And a first level Vanguard is still an effective first level character, but we don't want to give you this class feature you can't use.
And something else we have to watch out for is dipping in for multi-classing, where we give you something too powerful at first level, so you just take that first level of Vanguard, and then you go be the class you really want to be. But you have forever this cool entropy point that you can do amazing stuff with. So it's all a balancing act, and at the end it can be like, how did we not? There was, I feel like it was a Witch Warp or something where somehow it got through writing and development, it's most of editing without being like, oh, we never said how many hit points they get or something like super. I was like, that we should probably put that back in there.
It's information we think you might need for your character. Maybe. I mean, maybe not for a Vanguard, because you'll just soak it in.
Have a lot.
But,
Might be important. You never know.
Something else we didn't mention now is shields, which are a big part of not a big part of the Vanguard necessarily. It's a potential build you could focus on, but a lot of people can use shields. And I don't know, I'm asking you right now on Twitch.
Right here in front of everybody.
Yeah, if people want to give survey feedback, is the shield portion just in the Vanguard survey?
The shield portion is just in the Vanguard survey.
So maybe there are people that tried out shields and
who don't know to go
and
to
didn't
the
play
Vanguard.
So if you have feedback for shields and you haven't been able to get it to us,
that's good to know.
That's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Essentially.
I mean, we had ideas for shields in Starfinder going all the way back to the beginning, right? We've got art in the core rulebook of a dwarf with a really cool energy shield. And we had the energy shield armor upgrade. And at the time, right, we only have so much space. We're trying to hit our core concepts. So one of the things we didn't know was, how are people going to react to this being the selection? And people were pretty strongly saying, I really want to be able to carry a Riot shield or a Captain America shield, or this is something I want for this science fantasy setting for this character concept. So since we knew we wanted to do the Vanguard, we wanted them to have some synergy with the shields, and so there will be more shields in the final version, and we're taking feedback on those as well. But it is a case where we really wanted to make that link and say, this is something that people want, so we're going to add this to the game. We just want to do it in a way that is balanced and makes sense.
Okay, great. So we're coming up on the end of the first part of the show. What stood out as far as any other feedback, any other reactions that you got from the surveys? Any fun
Did you
stories?
catch that knowing glance?
There was something.
There's a bunch of interesting things. Someone has made a strong connection between Vanguards and fudge, and I don't know fudge. The edible chocolate fudge.
All right.
Confectionery. It's another build, the confectionery Vanguard.
Yeah, we don't know where that's coming from, but it's sure in the survey. It was interesting to look. It was interesting to look at. And no, I'm serious. We were all sitting around going, "Fudge is like in half the answers from this one person." They mentioned fudge.
And if you're in the chat right now.
It was interesting to see what races got selected by the people doing the survey data. So humans and Vesk were the most common of the core races. And then the next most common choice is dwarf. Dwarf is more common than Lashunta so there are people, I mean, we don't say anything in Vanguard to make it sound like it's dwarf focused, but people have just naturally, independently decided, hey, dwarves should be Vanguards. That sounds dwarfy to me.
I could see that.
Some of it is that dwarves get a con bonus, and that's the key ability score of Vanguards, and a lot of people focus on. But what I like about Starfinder is actually you can pick someone with a penalty to con, and you'll probably be okay mechanically at the end of the day. And so I want to see the Barathu Vanguard, that's just a big wiggly tentacly thing that just turns its tentacle into a fist.
He just shakes his tentacle at you, and he's like, "Come on!"
Entropic Strike, the ability that Vanguards use to hurt people, just to not to put too fine a point on it.
Right.
But it used to be called Entropic Fist, and then we're like, oh wait, there's a lot of playable species that do not have fists.
That's fair. You don't want to assume that.
Yeah,
and then
so you can headbutt and all sorts.
Yeah, it's true.
I want the Yosoki in the powered armor that's just a sphere.
I love that.
Have a trail of death.
So let's see. Beyond that, what do you say about doing some Q&A?
Yeah, we can do some Q&A.
All right.
Joe might be here for the Q&A. We'll see.
We might lose him, folks.
So
ask Joe questions.
I'm going to do a sign off for the fun folks at YouTube, and then we'll get into Q&A.
Great.
So and a little muffin. Thank you so much for subscribing. That's very sweet of you to do. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. If you'd like to get involved in this Character Operations Manual playtest that we've been going on about for the last half hour, go to Starfinder StarfinderPlaytest.com. It's going on until the 16th of January 2019, so you've got a little bit more time to get in there and help give feedback to shape these 3 new classes that are coming out for Starfinder. If you liked the video, feel free to give us a subscribe and follow us and hit that bell notification and all of that sort of stuff. And if you're playing in the playtest right now, leave a comment and tell us what you think of it, and then head over and do some surveys for us, because that's really going to help us the most. And so I want to make sure to thank Joe and Owen. Joe's very first show knocked it out of the park. He was amazing. And I'm looking forward to seeing you guys again right back here next week. So for Paizo and for Joe and for Owen, it's just me, your old buddy Dan. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you again next time. Bye.
Bye.